Good evening and welcome everybody to the artist talk about works in silence. We're sitting here on this late Saturday evening in the Muffathalle, the festival center of the dance festival in Munich. And I'm Miriam Althammer and will lead through this conversation. And next to me there is sitting Boomershine, a dancer and artistic director of the dance ensemble, which you've just seen. And I'm very delighted to get to know more about these 5 pieces of Lucinda Childs. And Boomershine knows these pieces very well because he was himself a dancer with Lucinda and also her artistic assistant for many years. So welcome, Tai.
Thank you.
You always dreamed about restaging these early works of Lucinda Childs. And I would be interested, what was your interest in that and why these five early works from Lucinda?
Well, one of them, the one titled Radial Courses, the 4 people in the circle, was a piece that stayed in Lucinda's repertoire the entire time I was in the company. I danced it for years. I've taught it to other people. And it's a very beautiful and pure piece of dance art, I guess. And I always really enjoyed it. And I remember asking Lucinda once about it, because at that point in the company, we were dancing more current works of hers, to music, larger scale pieces. But this always stayed in the repertoire. And I didn't understand at that point when I was a dancer in the company that there were more of these types of pieces in her repertoire. And she made a passing comment about it once, and I thought, wait, there's more? What are they? Can I see them? And over the years, through my own research and talking to her, it came up that she had this period of her work in the 70s, before she started working with Philip Glass, where she had this entire catalog of these early works, all dealing with different geometric shapes and rhythms and numbers of people. And I thought it was just what a great source to show and to do. And so I chose the other 5, aside from Radial Courses, pieces that hadn't been seen or hadn't been staged since the 70s. So I wanted to give these pieces a chance to come back to life and to be seen also selfishly for myself, to see them, and also as a gift to her to have them staged and presented live. And I was genuinely curious what they would look like. There were films, short films, there were some photographs and lots of very detailed scores of the pieces, but it was going to be a surprise to all of us as to what would come out. And I was quite happy with the result, really excited, yeah.
Your first attempt of a restaging of Lucinda Childs you did in 2009. You danced 2 pieces of her, and then now for the dance ensemble you did these 5 works. How was this process actually going, and how did you transfer these pieces to the dancers of the dance ensemble?
Yeah, it was interesting. It's the trio that opens the evening. It's Untitled Trio, the first one. There's 2 Untitled Trios. There's a very scratchy film that cuts and has different angles, and there are some written descriptions about the work, what she intended, how she plotted out the space in the room. And that was really done by basically just taking clips of the video and trying to put together what was missing, talking to her about it a bit, trying to understand what would happen where. And it's also the nature, I think, of her dance. The physicality is not as let's say, involved as maybe other choreographers, especially those early pieces, like Untitled Trio. It's walking, it's sitting down, it's laying down and sitting up. So the movement or the physical investigation wasn't as complex as the rhythm and the staging and the placement. So I think there was a freedom there in how to perform it that allowed us a lot of safety in terms of how to present the works. The rest of the pieces are quite well scored. Untitled Trio is the only one that doesn't have a visual score. Lucinda works a lot with very graphic and visual scores on paper, actual written scores. Most of them are done from a bird's eye view, looking down, and you see the path in space with different symbols describing what the movement is or the different parts. And those scores are all quite clear, but it's still a bit of sort of dance archaeology, let's say. You have to look at it and kind of guess what it could mean. And again, there are photographs or videos of some of the pieces' films, so you have a sense of what the movement material could be, with written numbers as to what the rhythms are or the counting system. And then it's a bit of a research in guessing. Sometimes there are notes written on the sides of the scores. Like, this is counted in a 10, which is like a eureka when you find them. You're like, oh, that's okay. Now I get it. So, yeah. And even the titles of some of them, like Melody Excerpt, the final piece. I read a description that she wrote in a magazine, an interview once, that said she titled it because of the rhythm. It leaves you hanging. It's not a 3/4, 2/4 time. It's a 10. So it's, I think in the interview she writes, row, row, row your boat gently down the row, row, row your boat. It's a melody that's an excerpt. So in terms of how to count the material or how to approach the rhythm, in that case, the title really helped to understand that it's an excerpt of a melody. Yeah.
The score is, as this dance-specific medium, as a kind of notation, offers a lot of possibilities, as you described. And so now getting this insight, how these materials looks like, I guess it made clear how much Lucinda Childs is working with these structures and variations, which she started to work on in the 70s. What capacities does a dancer need to do these choreographies?
It's a shame the dancers aren't here. I'm sure they'd have a lot to say. Well, there is a very athletic aspect to the physicality that I don't want to diminish by what I said earlier about it standing and sitting. As you saw in the films, Lucinda was always very interested in running and skipping and hopping, jumping. And over the course of these pieces, it's a lot physically. It's an incredibly athletic experience. Just the constant jumping and the quick walking, which seems kind of simplistic, but it's quite an experience to go through. Aside from that, I think there's just there's a mental agility that's required, a focus that becomes the virtuosity. The virtuosity you see in these works is in the focus. I always say you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do Lucinda's work, but you do have to be able to maintain a specific focus for a long time. It's a very specific intelligence that's required, and it's a discipline, as Lucinda often says. She refers to the works as very disciplined, and that's what she was interested in at the time when she made them, was how do you approach this idea of discipline and what does it mean? And for her it was this, it was figuring out these very complex patterns and crossings and The interesting thing inside the work is that you don't repeat. Often people refer to her work as being repetitious or repetitive, but if you're inside it, you never do the same thing twice, which is what's so tricky. It's not just repeating the same phrase back and forth 45 times. It's actually 45 very slight variations. And that's what becomes the challenge, is maintaining that and not letting your mind wander. So, yeah.
Yeah, and not only the dancers, I guess, need this kind of focus, but also the audience while watching that.
Yeah.
And I'm always thrilled with these works, not only of Lucinda, but also of other postmodern dance figures. This kind of ease and bandness somehow, which is triggered through these works, and. I was wondering also that the pieces are played in silence or performed in silence, how radical this is also nowadays.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the key words we were using in our meetings with Dance On to talk about the works that we were interested in our team discussions and brainstorming, and the word also that Madeleine Ritter kept coming up with was radical. And I thought, yeah, that's actually it, that they were radical at the time, and that doesn't age. That's what's interesting, that if something is radical, it maintains. You would think we would get used to things. But it's interesting how these works are still very, radical is the best word. They still strike us in a way that's unusual or strange or new, even, dare I say. Yeah. And I find that also very beautiful, that somehow this idea is still exciting, Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned the Dance On Ensemble, and that's that's an important attempt in the dance scene in Germany in the last years, as a dance company for dancers over 40. So you have 12 dancers from 40 to 74, right. I read, and you try to aim to question the limitations of age in dance. May you describe that a little bit more, how that was going on? Like you started as a dancer in 2015 in this company, and then in 2019 you became also the artistic director. How this process was going on.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's I think a few of us in the company were fortunate enough to not have our ages be necessarily an issue in our own careers. Lucinda, for example, who I was dancing with prior to joining Dance On, never said to me, it's time to stop. So speaking selfishly, or as anyone can, I suppose, I never experienced directly that ageism from my employers. I certainly experienced it in the public or in my private life, explaining to people what I did after the age of even 35 was challenging in terms of always having to justify that, yes, this is what I do for a living. But when I joined Dance On and met other dancers, both in the company and other dancers we would meet as we toured around, I understood that this was a real issue for a lot of people. A lot of dancers who are in not just institutions, but also freelance work that are told, especially at the age of 40, which is sort of a kind of created cutoff date for a lot of people, that it's time to stop. And I thought, wow, that was never said to me, but I understand it's a very poignant issue for a lot of people. And I came to understand more and more the importance of this company and what it means for not just dancers, but also for an audience to be able to witness what dancers who have a lived experience can share. even in works like you've seen tonight, having staged, like I said, radial courses, for example, on young dancers, it's a very different experience to see it. And of course, I'm speaking maybe not from the most unopinionated point of view, but it is very different. And I always use works like this as a good example because they are so abstract. And it's just about the people running in a circle, skipping in a circle. And it's a very beautiful thing to see these dancers who are in their 50s and 40s doing this. And I've seen very young dancers doing it, and it's fine, it's beautiful, but it's a different experience. This carries with it a pathos that's that can't be faked, let's say. And I recognize that now, that it's also important, I think, for dancers who've had long and extended, rich careers to be able to bring that to something else. I very much, because I am one of them, value the dancer that stays with a choreographer for 30 years, for 25 years, commits their career to one choreographer. I also find that very beautiful and very important. But to give that dancer the opportunity to do something else, I think is really important, and that often is what's missing. You'll often see dancers in their 40s and 50s continue to perform, but for the choreographer that they were hired in their 20s. And that's often a case where they don't have the freedom to change, because who's going to take them? And I'm happy that Dance On can give a place to those dancers also, not just the dancers who've have rich careers dancing for 25 different choreographers, which is also great. It's also gives a place for those people who've really committed to one thing, but maybe have always had an interest in doing other things. And I'm happy to offer that to people. So, and to the audience, to see what that dancer who you only know in that choreographer's work looks like dancing Lucinda Childs or dancing Jan Martens or Rabia Moret or whatever else we're doing. That's I find it very beautiful to see that written experience on the body in another context.
Yeah, referring to this this experience, which is the body containing, like it's this embodied knowledge, which you all bring into this company. And I guess it's a very diverse knowledge.
Yeah. We're all from very different places, both mentally and physically, geographically. And it's great. It's I don't know, I find it very, I found especially, I have to say, in the Lucinda works, also because they're very personal to me, but because they are so abstract, and there is a beautifully failed attempt at unison. It's just not possible to be in unison, and there is an attempt to dance perfectly together that never is completed. And I find that really beautiful, especially when you see dancers from such diverse trainings and backgrounds. Somehow in these Lucinda works, I find that much more present. In the other works we dance with Mathilde Monnier, which is coming up in July, or other works, of course those differences are present, but maybe even indulged in, like in a different way. Like we really work on our differences and even exaggerate them. But to see us trying to dance together, I find very beautiful and very, poignant again, very almost emotional to see 5 dancers trying to do the same thing with the best of intentions and not doing it. And all you can do is try. And just the differences are what makes it beautiful somehow. So, yeah.
You also had a lot of experiences dancing with Merce Cunningham, for example, with Lucinda Childs, with Bill T. Jones. Did you, or could you imagine that you would dance at the age of, still at the age of 52 you are now?
Yeah, no.
And did you have alternative plans?
Sure, yeah. I think often were trained in a way, at least I was, and I can speak of the people I went to school with and other people I danced with, that were taught to always have a backup, which is not a bad idea. Anyone should, in whatever profession you're in, you should always have other interests or other ideas that you could do. Specifically with dance, though, it's really drilled into you that you better have a plan B, because this isn't going to last for very long. And which is, like I say, I'm not against that. It's just more, it's nice to see that it is possible to have a long career. And I'm glad to show that. I'm glad to say, when the few opportunities I have now to teach, when I say to students, of course, have a plan B, but commit to plan A. Go for it. Dance as long as you can. Why not? Because who's to say you won't dance until you're 60 or 70 and do all the things that you want to, and be as successful as you want to be. But yeah, I had other thoughts, of course. I was going to be a tierenarts, or I figured I would do something with animals eventually. But now I just have the animals in the company I work with, so I'm just dealing with them. But yeah, that was probably my only other side interest at the time when it came to study or other options. But dance sort of continued for me. But no, I did not plan on dancing into my 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, I believed, like everyone believes, that you're taught, like, at 35 you should stop, or at least plan, which I thought I would do. And then at 40 you should definitely stop. And if you go beyond that, you should really stop. So, but somehow, I just keep going. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a good closing word.
Sure.
Keep going.
Keep on going.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for sharing these thoughts with us. Thank you to the audience in front of the screens. I hope you enjoyed this evening, and enjoy the rest of the dance festival, also with some of the other works of the Dance On Ensemble.
Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.